Hello everyone and welcome back to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. You are watching my work on the Necchi Supernova. This is a Italian machine from the 50s, and I am about to reinstall or adjust the motor and its bracket, reinstall the belt and the hand wheel. Now I'm going to come in here. I've got a piece of Kleenex. You can use a rag, and you can see I'm going to try to clean up some of the just old oil. It doesn't hurt the paint, right? Sewing machine oil is definitely something the engineers knew would come in contact with the paint. So I've never seen a machine whose paint was damaged because of sewing machine oil. Now, because I'm going to start, what else am I doing here? Okay, because I am going to be installing my belt, I do not want grease or oil on that belt. And you guys, I've been handling greasy stuff here. So I can wash my hands, with soap and water, or if you're set up and you don't want to run to do that, I can take some of the rubbing alcohol, and rubbing alcohol is a pretty good grease cutter. Don't put it on your paint finish. You will be sorry. But, but I can get enough of the grease and oil off of my fingers so that I don't get it on the belt. Because if you put alcohol on a sewing machine belt, it will really, you're basically going to ruin it. It won't be long, and it'll start to come apart. That's just how they are. They weren't designed for a lot of chemical exposure. Okay, let's see what we've got here. We've got these bolts still loose. Now, we now have, whoops, this is the beautiful aluminum hand wheel that Necchi was using on these machines. They would later change it. You'll see when I show you guys the pink Necchi I have, they changed it to either painted metal or even plastic, but I think they changed it to painted metal on the paint machine. But you can see here this beautiful aluminum. Now there's a washer. It's easy to miss because it's the same color as the hub of the wheel. Do not lose the washer. There's a reason that washer is there, okay? It has a reason for being. And somewhere is my other washer. Oh, here we go. Before the hand wheel goes on, well, not before, I have another piece here that goes, and it fits right here. And it also has a washer. So again, if you don't want to lose your washer, just take them off. I knew this one was on here because I've seen them before. If you can try putting a little oil, which you need to use anyway, you can put oil here and it'll kind of act, it sticks it together a little bit, but you can still lose it, so be careful. All right, what am I going to do? I'm going to take a cotton swab, and I've got just some old lint, greasy lint. Let's go ahead and get that out of there. It's probably been sitting there for years, but hey, we've got the hand wheel off. Let's clean it up. Am I going to polish the inside of the hand wheel? No. I don't need to. It doesn't really serve any purpose. Now, I've mentioned to you guys before about Necchi hand wheels, and I don't know if this is going to show up, but down in here, let's see if I can point to it without getting in the way of the camera. Down in here is a groove, okay? And in that groove is, see, maybe you guys can see it here, right there. There's a wick, and that wick is there to soak up sewing machine oil, and that way it lubricates the hub or the drive shaft. And this wick is in pretty good shape. You can remove them and replace them with more wick. You can use wick that is similar in size to the wicks we use for Singer motor bearing grease for the motors that use those. Now be careful. I'm going around the ring here. I just went all around, and let the wick soak up the oil. Okay. If you put too much, it'll end up dripping on your drive shaft and make a mess. Now this also gets oil on the inside of the hub, which is nice because you definitely want your hand wheel to slide off and onto the drive shaft. And the spacing between this and this is very tight. Italian machines are known for it, and it's a wonderful, it's why they run so smooth and almost vibration free, but they also they are prone to freezing up for this same reason. So, okay, this is like a metal edge. It just has some dirt on it. Not worried about that. Okay, so what are we going to do before we put our hand wheel back on and our washer? Well, the first thing I'd like to do is take a cotton swab and some alcohol. And this is not a painted surface, so it's okay. And I'm just going to take it into the groove. You guys have seen me do this with other machines before. This groove is where your belt rides, right? Because a hand wheel is really a pulley, and the other pulley is down here on the motor. Both surfaces, while you've got them open, go ahead and clean them with some rubbing alcohol on a cotton swab, okay? And you can see it's really useful for getting that surface clean again, and that's what you want. And while we're at it, of course, let's go ahead and do the motor pulley, right? Same thing. Now, I like doing this before. You definitely want to do it before you put the belt on. You don't want alcohol. This is 90% isopropyl alcohol. It evaporates very fast. You don't want to get alcohol on your belt or oil. You don't want to get anything on your belt. Belts need to be dry and free of dirt, oil, and anything else you can imagine. All right. Okay, so we're going to take, here's my washer. Okay, you can just put it on like that. You could also have left it there instead of taking it off, but I wanted to take mine off. Here we go. Now, nice and snug. Okay, now I have not reinstalled everything for my hand wheel. I haven't put the whole assembly in yet, right? Because this washer, if I recall, if I'm remembering this correctly, goes here. And then this piece goes here, and it will sit like that. But I don't want to assemble this thing yet because I need to get to that groove. Some machines you can slip on a sewing motor belt, but the Necchi is so flush and tight, and again, it was part of this was done for design, and anyway, and you just heard the little clatter of my my other washer. There are two big washers. Okay, we'll set that aside for a moment. Now, this is a kind of a strange little way of doing this, but bear with me. You want to make sure you don't get oil on the pulley, and we're going to take basically take our belt, and I've noticed that I now have more oil on my hands, so I'm going to just wipe my fingers and get this grease and oil off. Again, I don't want it on the belt. If this happens, guys, and you get oil or grease on a belt, don't panic. It's not like a huge disaster. If you get alcohol on it, you may want to just replace it. But with oil, if it happens, get yourself a good detergent and water. You can wash these belts. Just wash it with soap and water, get the oil off, and let it dry. Once it's dry, it should be okay. So, but an ounce of prevention, is worth a pound of cure. Okay, so here's our belt. I've got clean hands. I've got my pulley, or my hand wheel, otherwise known as a pulley. Now, you're connecting the belt to two pulleys here, right? You got the pulley from the motor, and you've got the pulley, or the hand wheel groove, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these two. And right now the belt is loose, but as soon as I go to move up to get my hand wheel on the shaft, it's going to increase the tension, but that's okay. Now, how was I able to do this? And look how loose this belt looks, guys. Yes, the belt looks loose because I have not yet, right? Remember I told you guys that remember the bracket, it has slots and it slides back and forth. That is what allows us to get to adjust the tension on our motor belt. Okay, so you can see here it's much looser. As I move backwards, it's going to give me more tension, right? Not super tension, but it will give me some more. I can also adjust the tension by adjusting the bracket here, I believe. Actually, that may not be the case. I think these simply hold the bracket to the motor. Okay, so now has come the time to complete this tension adjustment. Now, the key is here, okay? So I'm going to push back, but I can also, there's play here, and it's designed for play, okay? So what I want to do is I want to adjust this back, and holding it with my fingers, I haven't tightened any bolts yet, I'm going to push. And see, I like to have about 1/4 of an inch pushing in. This is an estimate. There's nothing digital about this, right? If I don't get enough tension on this belt, it will slip, and you're not going to get much. You're not going to get any power to the needle. Okay, so keep the tension. Notice the grip I've got here, guys. Hold your grip here. Don't let go, because you're going to lose that tension. And this tension should be fine. Now I've got to get in here and tighten the bolts. And I've done this before, and I remember it because if I let go of my grip here and I tighten the bolts, then I got to loosen the bolts and start, from square one. But that's okay. That's how I learned it, and that's how sometimes it's not just watching a video, guys. You have to just get in there and do. And as I've mentioned many times, I don't edit these videos. If I drop something or if I have to start over, I try really hard to keep everything in here because I want you guys to watch me. You think if this guy who's been doing this long, if he can make a mistake and it not be the end of the world, then you can, right? Because it's easy to watch someone on a video and say, oh well, yeah, they're doing it, but it's not always easy to get confidence, to have confidence when you're doing something for the very first time. And that's why, it's not a perfect process here. And that's why I like you guys to see me when I drop something. Or let's see, I am still wanting a screwdriver that will help me. And you'll notice I haven't let go of my grip yet, guys, because there we go. Now I've got this bolt tight. Now this should be okay. I should be all right at this point, but now I got to get in here and get that back one. That back bolt, I was trying my best to get it tightened up. Like I said, this is one of those designs. Most of the Neckis I have worked on, especially the BU series, they really are a joy to work on. They're really not any more difficult, other than sometimes they freeze up. Getting to the belts and the motors is no different than most vintage sewing machines. You have a rear, you have a bolt, you have a motor on a bracket that's bolted to the side of the machine, and you have very easy access to it. But in the 50s, Necchi was one of the first, and then later the others did this. They started covering their motors, and that itself is not bad if the motor is still mounted outside. But no, the Italians, of course, they put it inside because they could, right? And design had a very powerful influence on how the machine was engineered, okay? Even more so than... Now, I've gotten this pretty snug, but I'm going to take my little ratchet because I can really get snug there, and I want to make sure that I'm not loose, because once I get my tension set, it's kind of interesting. Sewing machine motors and sewing machine belts, once you get the tension adjusted, as long as you have the tension correct and then you snug down, your sewing machine bracket, as long as it's stable, it's really incredible. You don't typically lose tension unless the belt just wears out or you didn't have it or you did not have the bracket adjusted. Now this bracket, I think, may be made of a hard plastic. So I've gotten it nice and tight, but I'm not going to tighten it anymore. I don't want to harm it. Okay, guys, we had now I'll be testing this later, and if I have to come back and adjust the tension, I will, but I think we're okay. We should be okay. You only want as much tension on a belt as you need to get good traction, good sewing power, because if a belt is too tight, it's really rough on the motor, okay? It can really shorten their lifespan. So, okay, what are we left to do? What left to accomplish here? Aha, okay. So I'm going to put this washer back on, and let's see. Now this didn't really have any oil. I'm going to put a little oil here. You might think I'm being a little retentive by doing this, but I am not kidding you when I say that Necchi sewing machines have some of the tightest parts that when they fit together you will ever see. And you really, there we go. Now, I don't know if you guys saw what I just did, right? Let's see if I can pull this. Come on. If I can get it out. There we go. Okay, guys. So I put this. Okay, put the aluminum. Whoops. I put the aluminum hub on. Okay. This piece, you push it in, but notice there's one little slot here. And this piece is not going to be on properly until you turn. Let me get something to point. You guys see this right here, that slot? Hopefully the light is good for this. You can see there's a slot here. If you just put this piece in, it looks flush, it looks fine. Oh, no problem. It's going to be a problem and you're not going to get much sewing done. Watch what happens. I'm pushing in. You hear the little clop. Now it is in position. So again, a lot of times it's those fine details and you won't know, right? In fact, I could have easily put this in because it's been a while since I did a Supernova, but I was like, hey, wait a minute, yeah. And if you get it wrong, let's say you didn't see this video and you did this, no problem. You'll want to disassemble this piece and try it again, or find a manual, either a user or service manual or a video like this one. Okay, now this is the beautiful, the amazing aluminum clutch knob. Oh no, not plastic, and not steel. They wanted aluminum because it reduced the weight. This was a very expensive piece to manufacture. To fabricate to fabricate all of this was expensive. These aluminum pieces specifically were extra costly, but you know what? They were willing to do it, and in the 1950s, you still, I believe, still had reasonable, I should say reasonable, you had people, the cost of manufacturing in Italy was not as high. Now it would eventually keep going up as with the rest of Europe after the war, and this is when a lot of the sewing machine manufacturing ends up migrating to Japan. It already had, but it would increase. All right, now this is just a Kleenex with no alcohol, and I'm going to go ahead and just wipe this down. You know, the paint finishes often are they're just so nice and glossy. I don't really need, you can put cleaner and wax on this if you want, but it's not an absolute mandatory thing. Now this piece is especially dirty and grimy. This is our cover, right? So if you look at the inside, you know, this is not dust, it's not loose. You can clean this if you want. My clients don't really, you know, I ask them, do you want to pay extra? And they're like, no, just make it look nice and be sure that all the maintenance has been done. And that's what the machines were designed for, okay? So I'll probably take some more cleaner to this. I'm not done with this yet, and that's fine. That's kind of like a last thing that I need to put on. Okay, but I do want to go ahead and get my clutch knob on, this wonderful clutch knob, and I again put a little oil here. There's, you know, a drop or two of oil here on the threads. You know, give the machine a break. It's been sitting, and again, machines made of metal were designed to have lubrication. They need it. You know, it's Okay, so I've put a drop of oil on my, these are my little clutch knob set screws, which are very easy to drop. I almost did. So let's see if I can get it threaded without dropping it and having to crawl around on the floor looking for it. Some people don't always believe when you tell them, oh, you'll end up looking in the corners of your room for screws, and then it happens and they realize, oh, yeah, that video dude was right. But, okay, so I'm just going to put this back on. And then I can adjust set my screws as I need to. Okay, so I loosen it to wind the bobbin, tighten it to engage my transmission. Just a beautiful, no one makes a sewing machine out of materials like this anymore. Not even industrials have anything this fancy. They don't really need it. Okay, guys, so there you go. We have reinstalled the motor, adjusted the motor bracket, gotten the belt installed, the tension adjusted, and now the tension is permanently set until it needs to be reset in the future, because we've gotten our motor bracket adjusted. And the hand wheel assembly, this is a fairly fancy hand wheel assembly as home sewing machines go, but the Italians spared no expense back in those days. And so there you go. We've been doing gradual bits of work. Now when you look at the machine, it still looks kind of grungy and dirty, and that's fine. Cleaning the body is one of the last things that I do. That's kind of the, sort of getting the gravy, that's kind of the finishing touch. Now, I want to show you guys something. We'll talk about this in a different video when we talk about the feed dog plate or the needle plate, because it's an interesting design in its own right. But one of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to let this sit, is there's a piece of tape. A lot of vintage machines, they did not have seam allowance markings on them, and so people would put tape on them, and the tape over the years gets gummy and weird and brittle, and it can stain, and it's hard to get off the machine. One of the things you can do to get tape off a machine without hurting the paint, especially, this is masking tape, I guess that's the most common thing I see, is to take sewing machine oil, okay, and just saturate the tape, okay. Now, when I say saturate it, let it sit. You may want to let it sit overnight, a couple of days, see how it does. But what will happen is this sewing machine oil is going to act like a softener, and it will help. It's not a magic wand, but if you let this soak for a while and you go to remove the tape, it's going to come off more easily because the glue starts to gradually get dissolved by the oil. But again, the oil takes a while. It's not a fast, fancy solvent, but it also is pretty harmless to your paint, your sewing machine paint finish. We want to preserve as much of that as possible. And you can see, like I say, I've got my greasy paw marks on this thing, and that all of that will come off. It will all come off when the machine is in the last part of its overhaul before it is ready for sale. Like I said, one of the most interesting challenges on these is to get a tire that will fit, because the Italians wanted their own special bobbin winder tire hub. And so I believe I can get one online if I don't have one. And if I do, we're still coming out of the pandemic, so I anticipate as we get into summer, I have a pink Necchi, I have this machine, and I have one 201 potted motor Singer, and that's all I've got left except for that old Kenmore. You guys, I appreciate you asking me about it. We'll see what happens this summer. I may be able to I'm going to give it one last college try to see if I can get the old Kenmore finally degreased enough that I can get it running reliably, and then we'll see if anyone wants to purchase it. But it's been a great experience nonetheless, and a great experience talking to you guys. Anyway, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next video. I will make a few more videos on this machine, and then we'll see which of the other machines coming up next I'm going to work on. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.